Grace and peace to you from God our Creator and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. The story of the healing of the man born blind is one of my favorites, and I know I've got plenty of favorites. A miracle happens with a little spit, a little mud, washed off with a little water, and this man who was born blind is able to see. It was a miracle, yet that's not good enough for those who are around him. So let the interrogations begin, where neighbors, acquaintances, and Pharisees tried to wrap their brains around about how this possibly could happen. How can this be? Is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Wasn't he born blind? And who is this Jesus? He's a sinner. He doesn't follow the law. He can't be from God because he doesn't observe the Sabbath. Therefore, there's something else going on here. And what's amazing is that here this beggar, this blind man from birth, cannot celebrate. So instead, we have this back and forth of disbelief and belief, with the majority being confused, except for one, who is beginning to see the light, and we'll talk about him in just a moment. Now, with most of the passages in the Gospel of John, we can read them in two ways. Here, we have a literal approach. Indeed, the man who was healed, the man born now can see. Or there's the figurative approach, where blindness equals not understanding or being open to the revelation of Jesus the Christ. Clearly, the Pharisees and the neighbors and acquaintances do not and cannot understand the miracles of God, which leads them to their figurative blindness. However, I think there's another way that we can look at our text as well. And I would call it the conversion of faith approach. So the interrogation begins, and over again, the blind man tells his story. Now, in telling his story, it doesn't really seem that he's converting those who are listening. On the contrary, especially when it comes to the Pharisees, they seem to be a little bit angry with him. Yet this blind man learns much about his faith through his retelling of the story to the doubting questioners. So hear these words, verse 27. I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Which then made me ponder. For the sake of our church, I think we have to learn how to extend this invitation of faith to others asking this same question. Do you also want to become disciples? I also think it begins in this fashion, with the telling of our faith stories. It's a little something that we do in our catechumenate ministry called Footsteps with Christ. Now, most of you here have encountered God in some amazing way. I know this because I've heard it from you. And while that's fine and dandy, and I love to hear those stories, your faith story is far more impactful to those who are doubting, to those who need to hear how God's grace is transformational and powerful. And you know plenty of people who fit this description, do you not? I have a whole spew of folk that I can think of. People need the Lord. Yet we are not inviting everyone to the story. If we do not, aren't we just like the Pharisees who cannot see how God is moving within the blind man? So the invitation begins with your faith story. So this morning, I'd like to share with you the Reader's Digest version of mine. I was born a few moons ago to one Phil and Jody Guemmer. They raised me, my older brother and younger sister, in the faith, especially within the church, every Sunday. It didn't matter what Sunday it was, you made sure that we were there. And the way my dad would wake us up would be through bluegrass music. And living in Wisconsin, it was Packer territory. And I remember if they were in the playoffs or if it was a big game, there was always this one that they would always play. It was about Bart Starr. And it would go a little something like this. Bart Starr, Bart, I'm awake, I'm ready to praise the Lord. Now, I've been a Lutheran all of my life, and I'll probably remain so when God calls me home. And the joke in our family is that when I was born, it was not whether or not I was a boy or a girl. It was the fact that I have added to the Lutheran kingdom because of my Lutheran kingdom in the population. So here I was, in addition to the mighty empire known as Lutheranism. So at any rate, my family raised me in my faith, especially through music. I could see God in the notes, experience God in the words. I could feel God when that perfect chord was struck. In a way, God, and the way I perceive it is that God was singing to me his love. As I grew up, God was steadfast in his love, showing me what it meant to be uprooted from my childhood home in Wisconsin to some weird state of California. And I kid you not, I swore that everyone here in California surfed, laid on the beach, and said, "Dude." But my faith continued to grow with the guidance of beloved pastors, family, and friends. And then she showed up. Now, my mom always said, if you don't practice your piano, you better marry someone who can play for you while you sing. And she can. And better yet, she could sing like an angel. Jenny has taught me about my faith, what it means to listen carefully to God's whisper, to join in the laugh when God is laughing at me, to sing a new song of thanksgiving to my Lord, and to cherish God in the littlest of things, especially two boys that showed up out of nowhere, who, whether they know it or not, they have taught me about my faith in extraordinary ways. They've taught me about my faith in their questions about God, their laughter, their tears. They have showed me God's grace. Also, I am living proof. I am living proof that God is not dead, yet so alive. In all of the moments where my heart is cracking in pain, God is there. With my bouts of epilepsy, depression, PTSD, God has been there to comfort me, to embrace me, to sing to me some more, a love song of grace. And on my journey of doing this whole thing as a pastor, God has been there. Sometimes it's side by side, skipping down the yellow brick road like Dorothy and the Tin Man. But there are other times where I'm pretty sure God is dragging me along. But through it all, God is my anchor. God, through Jesus Christ, is my life. So that's me. Reader's Digest version. I could go into far more greater detail. But did you hear anything you could connect with? And if so, I invite you to tell your story. When it comes to inviting others, I wonder if we are approaching it all wrong. We need to tell our story, our faith story, not just to those for the sake of those who need to hear the gospel story, but I'm convinced that we need to tell the story in order that our own faith can grow and flourish. So who's ready to tell their story with me? I challenge you to invite people to explore faith with you. Asking this question, do you also want to become his disciples? My response would be this: yes, wholeheartedly yes. Amen.